over this very small diameter, and it's like a blowtorch with tremendous forces that punches right through. Now, as this breaks through and goes into anything, can be steel, concrete, sandbag bunkers, wood, or anything, uranium itself is soft. So you have parts of the fragments of uranium breaks off as it enters and goes through. The uranium rod emits alpha, beta, and gamma radiation and X-ray radiation. The alpha particle is a 4.15 MeV particle. That's 4.15 million electron volts. Now, the intercellular voltage, the voltage that your cell operates biologically, is 10 electron volts. So when that cell is bombarded by an alpha particle at 4.5 million electron volts, it doesn't have a good day. We have all kinds of other problems. We have the beta particle and the gamma rays, the X-rays. Now, we've actually measured the ionizing radiation emissions from a DU rod within, say, 4 to 6 inches at over 300 millirems per hour. Now, that radiation is continuous. So you get a fragment of DU into your body that's emitting at over 300 millirems per hour. Or if you're holding the rod in your hand, it's over 300 millirems per hour.
Because depleted uranium has significant chemically toxic effects on the environment and human body, and also because of its higher density even in comparison with lead, it is 1.7 times denser than lead, it has become of wide use in production of armor-piercing and bunker-buster munitions. The components of these armor-piercing and bunker-buster weapons are shaped into long darts weighing more than 4 kilograms, a large proportion of which is DU. In order to increase the resistance of penetrators against corrosion, they are made as an alloy of DU and other metals like titanium or molybdenum.
What parts of Iraq do you think that they are contaminated with depleted uranium weapons?
Really, in 1991 war, at that time, the bulk of depleted uranium was dropped on the western part of Basra, and about 300 or more than 300 tons are dropped at the western part of Basra and on the borders between Basra, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia.
I've done many measurements, and radioactivity still today, because uranium has a very long half-life, 4.5 billion years. So he will stay more than billion years in the nature.
Long time,
yes, very long time.
I'm particularly concerned about depleted uranium. It's a rather strange substance in many ways. It has a whole range of properties which, in my view, merit considerable attention. Firstly, it's a chemical toxin. Secondly, it's a chemical carcinogen. Thirdly, it's a radiological carcinogen. And fourthly, it's an endocrine disruptor.
What kind of patients do you have in your ward here?
We treat almost all cases of cancers in children. Sometimes we could not receive the brain tumor cases because we don't have radiotherapy.
That there is plenty of evidence out there that depleted uranium should not be used in munitions, and that on the precautionary principle, it should be, all use should be stopped, and people in those areas where it has been used should receive advice and be aware.
Are there any evidences, or have you seen anything like CDUWF seen any evidences of the health effects of depleted uranium in those affected countries?
I think what we have seen has been an increase in certain types of cancer, particularly in areas of Iraq, which are usually associated with radiation exposure, specifically lymphoma, leukemia, and to an extent breast cancer. At the same time, other cancers have decreased, but these ones which have usually tied in with radiation exposure have increased. We've also seen anecdotal reports of an increase in birth defects, and specifically birth defects which hadn't really been common and hadn't really been seen before the use of uranium weapons in Iraq in the first Gulf War in 1991 and then in 2003.
Victims of the depleted uranium weapon.
Yeah.
We're going to interview with the head of this hospital in Basra.
Okay.
And I sent an email to them. They said that they have higher risk of cancer and congenital malformation. And they have a very sad saying in Basra. They said that when they have a newborn child, they no longer say if it's a boy or girl. They ask that is he or she is alive or healthy or not, because many of them have congenital malformations like this.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Dreadful.
Can you please take
Yes,
these,
of course,
please?
yes. Poor thing. Oh dear.
The uranium particles could move with the winds, with the sands, and it might spread to thousands of kilometers. So in 1991, about, according to the estimation of some of the researchers, they said it's 45% of people who were living in Basra were contaminated at that time. And you know, the contamination usually occurred during the first 3-4 weeks after dropping the depleted uranium.
Where was the most contaminated area in Iraq?
Basra.
Which city? Basra.
Yeah, and also the water samples showed very high level contamination.
منين انت؟ بصره. شنو مرضك؟ وين؟
Gastric cancer.
gastric cancer. الان چند وقتی که بیماری داره؟
من امتى صار عندك هذا السرطان؟ على 3 ماه.
3 ماه. Well, there are some reports by either international NGOs or Iraqi doctors that the rate of cancer is increased since 1991. Do you confirm that?
Yes, we noticed that after the second Gulf War, 1991, we noticed increase after 4 or 5 years, increase in the incidence of our cancer patients. Yeah.
And what do you think about the cause of this increase?
We don't have any new event in Iraq except the war. We think that the war is the cause, and the weapon used upon Iraq was the cause of this increased incidence of cancer.
When the US and its allies attacked Iraq in 19th of March 2003, the use of DU munitions increased to a massive scale. The resulting death and destruction brought grave consequences that were exposed in front of the eyes of all the people in the world. In addition to suffering caused by the conventional bloodshed in this war, the use of DU in Iraq raised the death rate of children and the incidence rate of leukemia in women and children in southeastern Iraq and around Basra enormously. The source of the DU was from destroyed tanks, burnt armoured vehicles and buildings destroyed by DU munitions, as well as the remains of the munitions themselves, which emit radioactive DU dust for long periods of time following the end of hostilities. When combined with the arid weather in Iraq, these toxic particles disperse over a vast area, affecting people miles away in other regions of Iraq and neighbouring countries, who, in the coming years, will breathe in huge amounts of this dust. Do these silent particles emitted from cold and evil volcanoes truly settle on our today and future, our flesh, blood and breath?
اینجا صاحب